Hello, good morning. Welcome to Out of Curiosity for our podcast today. And today we're going to be speaking with Michael Epstein and Daniel Botineau. If I'm pronouncing that right, Daniel, is that correct?
Yeah, that's pretty good.
That's awesome. So we're here. I'm live here in Austin, Texas, and we are going to be talking about automation, which is our general theme today. Because having been in the e-discovery and information governance space and technology, to me, there's a lot about automation, but there's a lot I don't know. So I'm inviting some really smart people to kind of inform me and help educate me a little bit more on automation. So Daniel, welcome to the podcast. Michael, welcome to the
Yeah,
podcast.
Thank you.
yeah, thank you.
So, Daniel, you're kind of our guest of honor. Why don't we start with you? Maybe you can introduce yourself and a little bit about you and your organization.
Yeah, sure. So I'm the founder and CEO of Rempiva. Started a company around 5 years ago when I was actually working on data processing for e-discovery matters for forensic
Mm,
investigations. And I was frustrated by the fact that we had to do the same tasks over and over again. So I wanted to build a product so people like me could have a tool where they could say, okay, this I know how to do, just automate it and then focus on the interesting bits.
gotcha. How about you, Michael? Tell us about you. This is your first entry on Out of Curiosity. So, thanks for joining us. So, maybe you can introduce the group to you and tell us a little about yourself.
All right. I've been in the technology space probably for close to, I'm gonna say 30 years right now. It scares me when I actually think of that number. And today, my passion is picking apart business process, technology processes, understanding them, and then creating automation around them. And that's what I like to do. And so working at Condado and working with you and others and really working with clients to understand what their needs are, where their lots of manual tasks are, and then creating that automation and just the end product is just great to watch it just go right into production.
That's cool. So I want to frame it out for our audience. So Daniel, we met you a couple legal techs ago for the first time. We were introduced through, I think, one of your colleagues, Bill Potters, and he introduced us. And if I remember correctly, it was at Faces and Names after Legal Tech, and I think one of us bought each other a beer, and it was wonderful. So we're going to pick up that conversation from that point on. Right. So I guess my first question to help our audience understand what we're doing is I guess Michael, I'm going to start with you. What is automation?
What is automation? That's actually a very good question. Um,
I'm
you know,
curious.
I mean, I look at it as we'll look at it as the Michael Epstein definition of automation, which is taking manual tasks that and applying technology so that they function on their own with proper auditability behind it.
Okay.
So just adding one piece to that is you can automate a task, but if you have no idea of what it's done or if it's done it correctly, it's have you really automated something or just created another mess that has to be looked into the future? So automation must have auditability and proper logging behind it, so that you can be sure it actually ran and did what it's supposed to do.
Gotcha. So based on the definition, Daniel, and please also, if you feel that you want to add something to that definition, but based on that, I mean, is automation really necessary, especially in the e-discovery or just data processing area?
Yeah, it absolutely is. And the way I see it, where the state of the industry is right now in the e-discovery investigations IG world is where we were 20, 30 years ago, where when you wanted to write a letter, right? You wouldn't type that letter yourself. You would have somebody else do it for you. You would have a dedicated person, a secretary that would prepare it, that would do the spell checking, the grammar, that would review it, that would format it and do all of those steps. And right now, you don't need to do that anymore. You use a word processor that does all of those things for you, does all of those tasks. So it automates a lot of the things that were previously done manually, but it's done in such a way that it actually augments your capabilities and allows you to reach your end goal without having to do those uh, honestly boring tasks that you have to do every single time. Where we apply that for a discovery, it's funny what you mentioned, Michael, that it has to be well documented and auditable. What we do is the Rempiva software automates the steps that somebody would take in Nuix when processing data for whatever purpose that might be. And a lot of the times we realize that we build these tools that allow people to create and put that workflow in place in an automation platform. But by doing that, it actually forces you to go back and say, wait a minute, what is our process? Do we have it documented? If I ask somebody, one of the analysts or technicians, what are the steps we need to take? What are the conditions? Do we have that in place? And most of the times the answer is no. And it just forces you to go through a step of first documenting and making sure everybody in the group or department agrees with what the steps are, and then you can actually automate it and benefit from it. And then obviously the process never ends. You're just going to go back and optimize it and refine it and so on.
Gotcha. So let me throw this out there. So I'd like to get a couple examples, and maybe you guys can split it a little bit. So I'm looking for examples of automation, both from an e-discovery perspective, but also from a non-e-discovery perspective. So maybe Daniel, we'll start with you and talk about, because I know, and again, I want to be very clear to our audience that the e-discovery advisory and Condado team, which is our side, we don't have any type of monetary relationship with anybody or any providers. We're completely technology and provider agnostic. So these are questions because Daniel's crossed my path and I thought we would share with it. So we may mention technology or tools. I just want to make sure that we're, this is not a shill or a pitch piece that they're paying for or anything like that. So let's just throw that out to the audience. But Daniel, you have integrated e-discovery workflow within Nuix, right? And so can you tell us a little bit about that and that automation and why you did that with specifically around Nuix?
Right. So the reason for that is that Nuix has a really powerful processing engine that is able to parse all of these file types. It's able to scale. You can run it on one computer in parallel on multiple workers. You can run it on multiple computers. You can do a lot with it in terms of performance. You can also do a lot with it in terms of depth of the operations that you can do. That's one of the things that people love the most, but that's also something that scares people. That if you have a new person opening a Nuix console that have to do a job, they have to do a specific job, you have a lot of options in there. You can do a lot of things at the entire case, a subset of the case, a filter, a view, certain items. So it can be a bit daunting sometimes just to do that work. And also, it's very easy to make mistakes. So that's the reason why we capture what are all of the steps that you would take in, for example, let's say you're doing a forensic investigation and you want to load the data, see, or do I have any forensic images, treat them in a specific way, run these tasks, do some QC, perform these other searches, export data there, run a third-party tool that extracts maybe other metadata, run some AI for image recognition, object detection, bring it back, correlate things. It's a lot of steps that you would have to do manually. So we capture those where we allow somebody to take their process with all of these steps and capture them in a Rampiva workflow and then just hit start and take them through all of these and run all of these for them.
Right. So, Michael, I know that at your previous engagement, you had actually implemented a whole Nuix infrastructure for the corporate client that you're working for, and you're doing now work with M365. Maybe can you, does what Daniel's saying around specifically using a tool like Nuix, and then how did you apply that to much more at the core or M365 level?
So at the time, we didn't integrate that with M365, but what we were doing at the time was automating functions, which is, as Daniel's explaining, is taking those functions, whether you're moving data over, you're unpacking it, you're then importing it into Nuix, and what we did was we automated a lot of those tasks. So the idea was if a request comes in and data is deposited someplace, okay, my data is deposited. I know what case it's gonna be applied to and how I import it, and it's applying that automation to bring it in. But those that was work we actually did on our own. What we're doing today, and just kind of fast forwarding to what we do today, is we're looking at the M365 environment and looking at the discovery functionality. There's a lot of manual work within 365 today. So excuse me. What we've done is we've picked apart those processes, laid out the workflow, and we've we've automated the manual work of going through all the different wizards.
Hmm.
I have a wizard to set up a case, I have a wizard to add custodians, another wizard to apply legal hold and at search, etc. So if you go through all those different wizards and enter all the information, it could take a bit of time to get it all together. So we've created automation around that and bringing the client to a single user interface that they can work from, that then progresses the case and moves it forward and saves them a lot of time. And also, we're capturing the history and the changes that have been done along the way.
Right. So, Danny, have you looked at anything like at the M365 level? What have you been doing with that? Because I know a lot of the people that we work with are really struggling with this. So, what is your take on that?
Yeah, yeah, no, sure. And a lot of people are using that M365 now to store their, like, it started with emails, but it seems like it's spreading more and more in the corporate world. What we do with that is we're leveraging the capabilities of the Nuix engine today that has connectors into M365.
Hmm.
And we have a scheduling mechanism that allows you to define certain schedules when jobs with specific workflows should run. And we can have jobs that are will go using the Nuix engine, connect to M365, grab the data based on the various conditions that were put in place there, and then bring it in, process it with Nuix, and decide what to do from there. So that allows you to do, for example, if in the discovery scenario, for example, if a corporation realizes that in 90% of the litigations that they have, 90% of the top management is involved as a custodian, then maybe it makes sense to transfer and process and have that data ready before the litigation actually hits the door.
Hmm.
What you can do with these bricks that we have in place, I'll call them building blocks, with the Rempiva workflows and schedules, is to have something that, let's say, runs every week or every day for the group of people that are defined, that will transfer all of their data that is newer than a certain date and the last time the job ran, brings everything in, processes it, and puts it in your review platform in a place where the moment the litigation kicks in, you can right away start analyzing it. And you can do the same thing for other groups as well, maybe with different frequencies or different depths of data. You might just get email, but not Teams or not the OneDrive. We leave that up to the actual company that's running this to decide what pieces need to be brought in with at what frequency.
Gotcha. So, I mean, help me understand a little bit more about trying to apply automation between structured and unstructured data. I mean, and I guess let's define what those are. So, I guess, Michael, I'm going to throw structured data out to you, and then Daniel, I'm going to throw unstructured data. So, Michael,
Yeah.
tell us about structured data.
One, right?
Yeah.
I think we should have switched that.
All right, let's switch it. We could do it. All right,
M365 is all unstructured.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I know you also dealt with other things, but at least help us define it.
Define automation against structured data?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so automation against structured data would be to, if you're looking at let's just look at a standard database, and that could be against the different applications. It's really coming up with a method to define the specific columns or specific fields of data that you want to export out, but also applying those how you derive that information right up front. So it's and some applications have that already defined. Others, you may end up going against an actual database and then having to define that. But to me, the automation is being able to apply that against the database with some set of standards, so that when the data is exported out, the data becomes meaningful to the reader.
So, Daniel, I mean, let's talk about a little bit what unstructured data is from you, because I mean, you're digging. I mean, and Nuix is like the unstructured. I mean, it really focuses on those type of things. So, tell us a little bit about that and your experience around that.
Yeah, sure. So, like, unstructured is anything that doesn't have a structure to it. Obviously, like a Word document or a report that you wouldn't expect the software to understand and parse the logic in it. And I think it's not a question of like fully structured or unstructured. You're always going to be somewhere on the spectrum. For example, an email will have some structure to it, the fields that you have there, but then you have a body, which is just text in the English language. that's also structured, but in a very specific structure that computers don't really understand very well. Although we're working to try to get like sentiment from those and extract some meaning from that data as well. And then you could have an Excel file attached, which like to some extent is structured data. So the whole, like, is it structured, is it unstructured? I think it's 99% of the cases will be in the middle. The Nuix engine is a very powerful in terms of like being thrown anywhere on this scale to be able to extract data from there. You could throw it a CSV file and have it extract fields, or also you could throw it, it's just a PDF that's just contain the scanned copies of documents and have it identify, run an OCR, extract the text from there. And then if you wanted to, you could even run some AI machine learning on the images to identify patterns, objects, or things like that. So once you have the unstructured data, it's obviously, you're going to want to get the relationships from it. You will want the, like, everybody's used to running keyword searches and finding documents that contain certain words, but extracting concepts, finding documents with similar concepts, finding, like I said, sentiment from chat messages, interpreting emojis and emojis that are combined. And
so hold on, Daniel. You jumped something in my head, and I want to make sure I'm backtracking it. So we went from talking about automation to really analytics, right? So help me understand how those things tie together.
Yeah, sure. So like automation, ultimately, you'll automate things that you do manually. Like Michael said initially, to automate something, you need to know what that is and to be able to document it formally. So I don't think we're at the step where we can automate 100% of the analysis, because we're still figuring out how to analyze all of these new concepts that are coming. So we're at the stage where we don't know 100% of what we want to do. Mm-hmm. But once we understand that and we define how we want it analyzed, it's just a matter of putting those specific steps in the workflow with logic conditions, with branches, whatever structure we might want. And then we will effectively run all of that decision tree in a workflow.
Gotcha. So Michael, I have a question around, and this is the thing that in terms of, as advisors and as consultants, one of the things we're constantly trying to do is help people understand why they want to automate or why they want to use technology. How do you help a business justify why they want to automate?
I start with business process.
What does that mean? What is a business process?
Meaning, if I'm working with a client, the first thing I will do is, if a client comes to me and says, I want to automate this, well, my question back is, what do you want to automate? And really, to answer that question is to sit down in a room and do a, as we do, well, can't do a whiteboard session, we can do a virtual whiteboard session, but it's really, it's working with the client to pick apart, in essence, to map out their process that they want to automate. So I look at everything first from the business side. I have to look at it through their eyes first before I can then look at technology, how I can apply that technology to create what we call automation. So it's looking at that process, looking at the manual processes they do, and specifically looking at the pain points. So I always try to zero in on the pain points for a client that's actually brought them to us, to me or someone else, and say, when they come to us and they say automate, well, what's painful about that process? So, to summarize, it's the business process. It's whiteboarding that out, understanding it from end to end, and then understanding the pain points. And then from that perspective, I can then apply the technology and help create the automation.
So, Dan, I know you came, and it's kind of still piggyback on that in terms of why a business wants to automate. You, if I remember correctly, came from the forensic side. You were a forensic analysis and investigator. So, I mean, to me, that flags risk. What does that mean to you?
There's, I can touch on that aspect. And there's the robustness of the process that you increase by automating. There's the efficiency by which you do tasks. But let me focus on something that's close to heart to me, which is the retention of talent. Like, you have very smart people in your team that are able to do work on a forensic project, and when they get some type of data, they know what to do with it. They're gonna, if it's of a certain type, if it's like a case where somebody might have forged expense reports. They'll know to say, okay, let me look for files that have been deleted. Let me look for search history, let me look for these items, and then extract them and then take them forward. So we just pull on the thread and do things. And there's things that are obvious to do. There's some things in edge cases which you really need to know what you're doing and have to have seen that before and to go down that path. So the problem that we're having is if you have these really smart people in your team that are able to do this, but you always put the same cases in front of them, they'll get bored doing the same things. And also, you'll want to scale, you want to do more projects. So what happens is that these very highly technically skilled people get moved into a people management role where you want to have other less competent people do their tasks at a higher scale. And it's a combo that doesn't really work well together, and then it's not really successful. So this is where automation can come in and say, okay, all of this knowledge that my expert has, let's grab it in this expert system. Let's bake it into the workflows where if we want to have 100 conditional steps and branches and go down all of these paths, we can do that. And so that keeps your experts challenged, satisfied. They're able to work on these things, keep building on this workflow, expanding it, doing other new use cases. And you also get the benefits that come with it for like now you can run this at scale with robustness, with auditing and everything else that you attach to that.
Well, Danny, that's a really interesting point. And you know, as you were mentioning that, I had an angel and a devil on my shoulder. I had the Mr. Burns corporate, you know, shell going, hey, if I can use automation, I can get rid of all those expensive experts, right? So how do you address that? How people that are concerned that automation is going to work them out of a job, why would they want to implement that?
Yeah, because those people will be able to like they'll get more time that they'll be able to spend on actually meaningful tasks for the end client, whether it's the internal end client, whether it's a service provider. They'll be able to actually look at the data and draw conclusions that are not like an A B or something you can just do with a formula. You'll be able to actually the work will not get replaced. The work gets augmented by using these tools. So I think we should definitely embrace it. And this is where the world is going. And it's either get on the train, take advantage of all of these and benefit from it, or get left behind.
So, Michael, that's a I mean, with your in-house experience, I know as you've been trying to help build automation. I mean, have you had that experience where people will go, maybe we'll push that till next year because that gives me another job because I manage my spreadsheet. You know,
Yeah.
how does that work?
No, we've had that issues, especially in house, and it's I mean the way I've addressed it is it's I think it's a little bit of what Daniel's talking about it, but it's also it's helping people to understand how they can move themselves forward into that technology and leveraging their skill set, what they have. So there's always the fear, well, am I working myself out of a job? Well, you're not really working yourself out of a job. You're repositioning yourself and retraining yourself and retooling yourself. And I think that's the way people have to look at it. So and I'm able to now take my skill set and apply it to automating tasks that I would normally do manually, but then that automation has to be maintained, and you move into that. So people have to have the confidence in their own skill sets that they can move forward with as technology advances.
Right. So I guess, you know, just to kind of, you know, on the automation piece, I mean, actually, I'm curious, you guys have any questions for each other? Is there anything that would engage you?
Automation enough times today.
I'm sorry, say that again, Daniel?
Have we said automation enough times? Like we should have had a drinking game of like drink a sip of beer every time we say automation.
All right, I think that's a great idea. So that I think the next time we have, because I mean, I always have questions around automation, and but next time we'll definitely have it as a drinking game, and we'll be I think we'll be pretty hammered. So, but I mean, what about you guys? I mean, how do you guys? I mean, you know, you've not really engaged. I've been asking a lot of questions. What questions do you guys have for either each other or me or whatever? I know I'm throwing you guys at the walls, huh?
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Well, then I'm going to go to
Yeah.
my bit. And if you guys have a question, you want to think through that, I'm going to go to the bit that I've been experimenting, because I mean, this is automation. It's super technical. So I think the crowd we're going to draw for that is going to be much more on what I call the nerdy side of the force. And that being said, when I'm not thinking about automation and e-discovery and all those wonderful things, I tend to like my Star Wars. And currently, for those that know, I've been catching up on the Clone Wars series because I've never watched those, and those are fitting into the new Mandalorian episode. So I'm doing what I call the Star Wars Clone Wars bit of quote of the day. And so basically, they have some really great quotes that begin at the beginning of these little things, and I want to take some of those and get your take on them and apply them to both your life and automation, or however you want to upload it. So here it is, the Star Wars Clone Wars quote of the day. Here it is: a plan is only as good as those who see it through. Let me say that again. This is a good quote, I think, for you guys. A plan is only as good as those who see it through. What does that mean to you, and how do you apply that to both automation and your life?
I mean, that's all about finishing what you started. I mean, that's how I'm looking at that. I mean, it's great to have great ideas, and start to work on them. But if you never take them to completion and implement them, it's nothing but words on a paper.
I like it. How about you, Daniel?
The way I see that is the plan might be good on paper, but if the person or entity behind it and more so the end goal and the purpose is not something positive and that is adding value, that is beneficial,
Mhm.
you're better off not starting it, not doing it.
Like it. I like it. All right, guys. Any other questions or things you want to throw out there for our audience to share before we wrap up?
Yeah, the Star Trek Next Generation
There we go.
Yeah.
Live long and prosper. I love it. Michael?
I think, I mean, no, nothing. I mean, Daniel, I think it would be good to catch up off this call and kind of take a deeper dive into the automation I think each of us are working on. See if there's how we maybe work together potentially.
So maybe what we need to think about is a automation e-discovery user group. I'm sure there's lots of people that are looking at that. So maybe that's something we could talk about. So anyways, well, everyone, thank you for joining us for this episode of Out of Curiosity. For those that are on YouTube, please like and subscribe below to our channel. We're really excited about bringing information and technology topics to you and being able to share those. Please ask questions, put them in the comments, and we're looking forward to our next edition of Out of Curiosity. Thank you, Daniel. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us, Jason.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
All right.